This is the most significant new car to be launched in Malaysia in 2022, the all-new second generation Perodua Alza. As you know, the Alza is an affordable, compact 7-seat MPV, but it can also be used as a super spacious 5-seater with a massive boot, which then makes it a very useful upgrade option for those who are driving a Perodua Myvi right now. And we all know there's like a million of you guys out there. So in this review, you're going to find out how good this car really is, how well is it to drive, how spacious it is inside, and are there any things that are not so good on this car. Trust me, there's quite a few. So let's find out in this review video. Let's go. Okay, as we all know, the Alza is a long-standing model for Perodua. It has been around since 2009. That's a long 13 years ago. Now, it's a bit of a unicorn in the car industry because over 13 years, it has not had a significant change through the years. Now, if you were to compare this against, say, a regular car with a normal life cycle, like say a Honda Civic or a Toyota Corolla, 13 years would have seen at least 2 new generations. But with the Alza, we are now just getting a second gen 13 years down the road. But then again, this is not something that's completely new for the Malaysian automotive market. The Proton Exora, launched around the same time, 2009, is still on sale, pretty much the same car as it is today. But anyway, back to the Alza. This new second generation model is every bit as 13 years better than the original. It's much bigger outside, much more practical inside, and it's just so much more advanced overall. This now is bang up to date for 2022 and beyond. But unfortunately, all that advancements also come with a very major price hike. The Alza now sits in a completely different price bracket from before. It starts from 62,000 ringgit going all the way up to 75,000 ringgit. That is a lot of money to pay for a Perodua. Just to give you an idea of how much this car has increased, the cheapest, most affordable version of the second generation model, 62,000 ringgit, is more expensive than the previous most expensive version of the first generation Alza. That's how much the price range has gone up. Now, choosing between the 3 Alza variants is a lot simpler. For starters, I would suggest that if you can, you should avoid the base 62,000 ringgit Alza X, because by today's standard, it just feels a bit too low spec, a bit too kosong to be a properly modern car. Now, Perodua has completely stripped out that car to bring the base price down, and you can clearly see that because that car doesn't even come with keyless entry. You have to take your key out from your pocket, press a button to unlock it. Keyless entry has been on every single Perodua Myvi sold from 5 years ago. So to take this out from a brand new 2022 model that's even more expensive, it's unacceptable, really. It doesn't even come with a few other basic things like a rear demister. That's something that we've had for the past 20 years. So clearly, very clearly, Perodua is just making the car as basic as it can to bring the price down. If you can, I would highly suggest you go for either the 68,000 ringgit Alza H or the 75,000 ringgit Alza AV. But thankfully, whichever variant you choose, you get a very high standards of safety because Perodua is now fitting its active safety system or ASAS standard across the range. Even the basic version gets AEB and all that. That is such fantastic news for car buyers in Malaysia. Now, Proton, it's time to take note. Now onto styling, this looks absolutely nothing like the previous generation Alza. I think if you were to put the cars side by side, you would not have guessed that the two cars are even remotely related to each other. For one, the shapes are completely different. The old Alza had a bit more of a traditional MPV look to it, while this has a bit more of a straight cut look, a bit more like an SUV of sorts. I don't know, which one do you prefer? That's again up to your own personal tastes. Me, I think I would prefer my MPV to look more like an MPV, you know? But having said that, this is entirely recognizable as a Perodua. Finally, Perodua has come with a cohesive design language, a family look that all its cars can share. And it's quite a good look as well, because as you know, this is a shared model with its parent company Daihatsu and Toyota, so it's got the same body as quite a few models: the Perodua Alza, the Daihatsu Xenia, the Toyota Avanza, and to a certain extent the higher end Toyota Veloz as well. Between the four models, I think this has the most attractive front end. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. However, for some weird reason, this car does not get LED daytime running lights or DRLs on any variant. You would think that after the latest Myvi has gotten DRLs in the last update last year, all new Perodua models launched after that will get DRLs, but yeah, somehow the Alza does not get it. It's a very weird thing which I don't understand. To get LED DRLs on the Alza, or also known as to make it look current enough to be a 2022 model, you have to get the optional gear up body kit for an extra 2,500 ringgit. But thankfully the gear up package here looks pretty good, nowhere near as garish as they look on the Altiva and especially the Myvi. What does come as standard on all Alzas is a touch and go RFID sticker. Now personally, I would still prefer a built-in smart tag system like in the Myvi and in the Aruz, but RFID is supposed to be the future of Malaysian tolls. Now onto the side, like I said, is completely different to the old Alza. It looks nothing like the one before in terms of shape, profile. This is as original, as new as it gets. The length is very different as well. This is around 20 centimeters longer for the benefit of more interior space, of course. The wheels are brand new too. These are 16s on the H and the AV, or smaller 15s on the base X. Exclusive to the AV are the rear brake discs, while the other variants get standard drums instead. Now one weird thing that I do have to point out is that the brake discs have different sizes, and between the two, it's actually the rears that are bigger than the front. In most other cars, it's the other way around. Now this is because the front brake discs are shared across all variants and they are designed to fit even under the smaller 15-inch wheels, while the rears are only designed to fit under 16s. One more visual oddity that I have to point out is the low ride height of this car. Straight out of the factory, it looks like it has been lowered, fitted with sport suspension. Now this car was clearly designed to have much higher ground clearance like it does in Indonesia and the Philippines. For Malaysia, Perodua has specifically chosen a very low riding car, and this is to benefit the ease of getting in and out for kids and the elderly, as well as comfort and driving dynamics. We'll get to that or later on when we drive this car. But just visually, I think it looks pretty good, pretty sporty for an MPV. It's just that for someone with a bit of an OCD, you can't help but notice that the front wheel arch is not designed for this low ride height. You can see that the side gaps are bigger than the top gap. It's one of those things that you would never have noticed until someone pointed it out. But I guess now that I have, you can't miss it. Sorry, Perodua. Now onto the back, this is far squarer, far more boxy compared to the original version. And some would say that the old version was a bit more sporty than this one. That I would actually agree with. But overall, as a whole, I think the design has taken a massive leap forward. You can clearly tell that the old car was designed in the 2000s, while this was designed in the 2020s. As for the taillights, they are properly modern as well. The shape is somewhat similar to the Artiva. It's all pretty squared off, and this is completely LED as well. Everything from the brakes to the signals to even the reverse lights, all LED. Very modern there. In the center here, there's this big black plastic piece that connects the two taillights with a chrome line at the bottom. Now, aftermarket shops, you know exactly what to do with this, right? A simple piece that connects the two taillights together. That's gonna look pretty unique. Down here is a brand new Alza typeface, which I think looks pretty good. This is a bit of a love it or hate it design, but I don't mind it. I think it adds a touch of class to this car. On a Perodua, that's pretty rare. Now, just like the exterior, the interior of the brand new Alza looks nothing like the old version. The original Alza had a rather funky, rather weird interior. It was very JDM, and it has a bit of a spaceship design to it. The instrument binnacle is right down the center, the automatic gear lever is on the dashboard, and it even has a center front seat instead of a center console. This here is a far more traditional, far more conventional dashboard layout compared to the older version. But that is not to say the new dashboard is just plain Jane and boring, because it does have quite a few interesting design details. The instrument cluster over here is a fully customizable, fully digital display, similar to the one in the Artiva. At the top, we've got a large touchscreen, very modern. And this Perodua has a two-tone dashboard design. In the center here is somewhat sandwiched by black, but in the middle it has a bit of a dark maroon, almost brown finish. Overall, I think it does look very, very eye-catching. And then the whole feel of it is very familiar. Perodua, you've got the same buttons, the same aircon controls, although in the middle here it sort of looks and feels as if the designers just ran out of ideas. There's just a blank piece of plastic over here where they could have easily put a cubby hole or something. But at the same time, this high center console over here without a traditional handbrake does give it a bit of a premium vibe for this car. As for build quality, it's all very typical Perodua. Everything fits nicely, nothing looks out of place, although obviously everything you can see, everything you can touch are hard plastics. But Perodua, if you are going to continue raising your prices, if you're going to go into the 80,000-90,000 ringgit brackets, you are going to have to add a few soft touch materials at least somewhere in the dashboard. As it is, however, the Alza is quite interesting. It has quite a few different texture work. At the top of the dashboard, there's this crosshatch plastic design. In the middle here, it's got round dotted design, while the bottom piece is the traditional leather print pattern. It's a bit of an odd mix, but overall I think it works. Now onto the center screen over here. This is going to be different depending on which variant you choose. If you get the base X, you're going to get a basic button type head unit, which looks really ugly, very old school. If you get the H, you get the same display and touchscreen as you do in the Artiva. If you get the top spec AV as you see over here, you get a brand new interface with full support for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That's a first for Perodua, as well as a first for a local Malaysian car brand. That is a very nice addition indeed. But before I show you the Apple CarPlay, I'm going to show you the standard interface first. It looks very sleek, very easy to use, and it has a bit of a better English compared to the Artiva. For instance, it says settings instead of just setting in the early Artivas. But it does look as if the engineers or the designers took the previous complaint to heart, because they've sort of overcompensated with the English on this new version. As you can see over here, it says attenuate volume during reverse, which basically means minimize or reduce volume. I think we spent a bit of time in the thesaurus. But anyway, that doesn't really matter because obviously you will be using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto for the most part while driving this car, and it works fantastically well. Everything just works as it should. The display is nice and big, it's very clear, the contrast is pretty good as well. It's just that being a Perodua, don't expect the sound system to be any good because it's not. One thing I do have to point out, however, is the dangling cable over here, because this is the USB port that you have to use for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Instead of being hidden under the center console or within the center armrest, it's right there. So while you're driving, you'll have this thing dangling. Yeah, not a good look at all. Now let's move on to comfort and ergonomics, starting with the seat itself. I think the seat is just about okay. It's not particularly comfortable. You know, I'm not the tallest person in the world, but even if I were to sit up straight, you can see the backrest is very small, very short. If you are a much taller person, I don't think you would get enough support for long distances in this car. It's a fair bit better than a Myvi, but yeah, it's nowhere near the best in the class either. And then you've got your steering adjustment, or rather the lack thereof. You can only move the steering up and down. It does not have any telescopic adjustment. That is something that a lot of us who are used to driving bigger, more expensive cars are used to. And when we get into this car, this just feels alien, the lack of being able to adjust the reach. But at the same time, I do understand that most people who are driving the Alza will be moving up from older Peroduas, so they've never had the luxury of having telescopic adjustment in the first place. So that should be just fine for them. It's not even a complaint for them. And for the most part, I do have to say, it's not that big of a problem. Like for myself, in the Asia and in the Beza, I do have to sit in a rather weird, funky sitting position because I can't adjust the steering wheel. But in this car, in the standard position, I feel very comfortable behind the wheel. But that's not to say that ergonomics are actually good either, because sitting behind the wheel, my left knee is constantly banging this side wall over here. And for some reason, they've made the edge fairly sharp. So yeah, I really can't get that comfortable over long distances because my knee is constantly banging into this hard, sharp surface. And then there's the curious lack of any cubby space in this center console over here. It looks good, I'll give it that, but where are the holes? Where's the cup holder? Where do I put my wallet? Where do I put my phone? In the lower versions, there is a small hole in the middle here, which I think would be quite useful for handphones and whatnot. But on the top spec, you get less. I don't understand that. What you do get are side holes over here. There's another one on my side as well. That's where you are supposed to put your handphones and whatnot. But it's just not a very convenient space to use. It's kind of hard to reach. You have to twist your body in a funny way. And the angle that you will put your phone in, you will at one point snap your cable off. It's just not a very good, well thought out position at all. You would think that by moving from a traditional handbrake to an electronic parking brake, you save some space, you can have a bit more practicality, add a bit more cubby holes to your dashboard. But with this, they've somehow gone the complete opposite way. Not a good look. Now, the one thing that I really like about this car is that it has absolutely no blank button on this car. This steering wheel, every single button is filled in, so you no longer feel that you're driving a low spec vehicle. Even in the top spec Ativa, there is still a small blank button. On this, everything is filled up. The missing button in the Ativa is this for a 360-degree camera. Again, this is the very first Perodua to get this all-around view camera. It's not the greatest system, it's not very clear, it's kind of blur, and at night it's a bit noisy as well. But it works well enough, and better to have it than none, I think. Now, one last thing before I move to the back, I have to mention the seat upholstery. What you see over here, the full leather seat cover, is actually a gear up accessory. If you buy the standard AV, you will get a part leather, part fabric seats, which is a bit of a cop-out, I think. Usually when you buy the top-end AV Perodua, the bigger upgrades is the leather seats. But on this car, it's almost as if they are forcing you to go into the gear up catalog to make your car complete. One thing that I also don't like is the fact that the color of the seat highlights do not match the dashboard. The dashboard is a bit of a dark brown trim. The seat is more red. How did they mess that up? Moving to the rear seats, as you've come to expect from Perodua, it is super spacious, very practical. Now the rear seats, you can slide it front or backwards like so. And this is for you to balance the space between the middle row and the last row seats, which we'll get to in a bit. But in its rearmost position, like so, you get a massive amount of space, which is something that is a huge upgrade even for the Perodua Myvi. Now, the Myvi being so popular and so spacious is both a good and a bad thing. It's good because you get a lot of space, obviously that's a good thing, but it's also bad because you get used to that level of space. Once you eventually want to upgrade to a bigger, more expensive car like a City or a Yaris, the rear space is usually smaller than what you're used to in the Myvi, so you don't feel like an upgrade at all. With this Alza, finally you get a proper option with a much bigger rear legroom than in the Myvi. Another big upgrade, of course, is a rear dedicated aircon vent. Finally you get a proper aircon vent to blow directly to your face rather than relying on the front aircon for a 7-seater like in the old car. That did not cut it in our weather. One thing though, for the aircon to reach the last row, you'd want to have it in the third position, but it's kind of loud, as you can hear. That drone can get very, very annoying over a couple of hours on the highway, I think. But one thing I don't really like about the rear seats is the short backrest over here. I'm only 167 centimeters tall, again not the tallest guy around, but even if I were to sit up straight, it's way lower than my shoulder level. If you're much taller, yeah, this is not going to be comfortable enough for the longer run. So while you do get acres of legroom and headroom as well, the seat itself is not the best shaped for long distance journeys. But besides that, you do get a lot of amenities in the back here. You get your own dedicated side cup holders, which is a nice addition, as well as a center cup holder as well. Down there you've got a pair of USB chargers, and if you do opt for the gear up leather seats, you get a lot of these pockets as well. You can use this for your phone, this for your iPad, maybe that for your laptop. It is very well thought out. One last thing to note, the side window does go all the way down, which is quite rare for a small MPV like this, although it does not have an auto up, so you do have to keep holding the switch all the way up. Now I'm going to show you the last row, and getting in and out is fairly easy as well. The rear doors open up really big, and the door aperture is actually quite wide as well. It's actually quite practical back here. And then you've got a one-touch tumble fold system for the rear seats like so. So getting in and out is really very, very simple. The height for the step in is also quite low because of the low suspension. So for younger kids and older people, it's going to be fairly easy as well. Now, in the back here, again, it's not too bad. This is far better than in the original Alza, of course. So in the back here, I get a fairly decent amount of space. For myself, I've got a lot of legroom left, but of course you can slide the center row front or back to balance the space available on each row. We have tested this, and you can actually fit 3 adults front, middle and back without any issues at all. So this really is a proper 7-seater, 7 adults at that. But to be honest, while you do fit in the back, you wouldn't want to sit in the back here for longer periods of time because it can feel quite dark, quite claustrophobic in the back here. For one, the seats aren't really the best, most comfortable out there. As you can see over here, the seating position is quite low to the floor. It's almost as if you are squatting. That's not very comfortable. And then the backrest again is very, very small, very, very short. So it's only really designed for children. Headroom is also a bit of an issue even for me. So again, if you're taller than me, yeah, you're gonna have trouble sitting in the back here. On the flip side, however, you do get some features in the back as well. You've got a slot here to put your handphones and such. There's even a 12-volt power socket for you to charge your items. You've also got your own dedicated cubby bins on the side. So even if you're pushed to the last row, the so-called cheap seats, you still get at least some features in the back here. I don't want to be sitting here for too long, but yeah, for short distances, it's not too bad at all. Now on to the boot. With all 3 rows of seats up, you do get a decent 140 litre boot space in the back. That is more than 50 litres increase over the old Alza. With all seats up, you can just about fit 2 cabin size luggage bags in the back, no problem. That is pretty decent indeed. If you fold the last row seats down, you get up to 500 litres of space. By MyV terms, that's about the same as if you were to fold down the rear seats, so that is super practical indeed. That's even more impressive knowing that there is a full-size spare tire under the car. Of course, if that's still not enough, you can also fold down the second row seats for an absolutely massive cargo room. That makes the Alza every bit as worthy as the term MPV or multi-purpose vehicle. Now, on the move, the Alza retains a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine as before, but this is now an all-new engine compared to the 13-year-old predecessor. This is now the latest dual VVTi 1.5 engine, and of course it's shared with the latest 3rd generation Perodua MyV as well as the Toyota Vios, Yaris, the Veloz of course, and so on. The output numbers, however, are slightly different for the brand new Alza. You now get 105 horsepower and 138 Newton meters of torque. That is a grand total of 3 horsepower and 1 Newton meters more than the MyV. Now, anybody who says that they can feel that difference is clearly lying, because 3 horsepower more, yeah, it makes practically zero difference really. Now, this car is clearly much bigger than the MyV, but it does have a much newer platform. This is based on the latest DNGA platform, similar to the Ativa of course. So despite this being a fair bit bigger than the MyV and a fair bit bigger than the old Alza even, its weight is still fairly low. Even in its top Alza AV guys, it only weighs 1,170 kilograms compared to the MyV. This is only 150 kilograms more. So for performance, you can just drive your old MyV, put 2 of your friends in, and it will feel about the same as that. Now compare this to the old Alza and it's even more amazing because as you see, this is a much bigger car than before. But if you compare spec by spec, this is actually the lighter car compared to the two. And remember, this has loads more equipment than the old car. All the improvements in the platform can be clearly seen here. Now, the bigger upgrade is of course the transmission for the Alza here. Gone is the old 4-speed automatic, replaced by a D-CVT gearbox. This is the same one that's been introduced in the Ativa and then more recently the facelift MyV. This is a dual mode CVT, so forget everything you know about CVTs if you're only experienced with CVTs have been in Protons. This is nothing like any of those old transmissions. This here feels far smoother, far more direct, much quicker to react than the old punch CVTs. As improved as the Proton CVTs are, like I said, it's now much better than it once was. This is a next level altogether. This is now, to me, even better than the CVTs fitted to the Toyota Vios and the Honda City. This feels smoother, far more direct, even quicker to react to your throttle inputs, even compared to those Toyotas and Hondas. If you, for some reason, have been completely allergic to CVTs, give this one a try. You might like it. If there is one fault that I can attribute to the CVT, is that it somehow exacerbates the noise problem of the engine. We all know Perodua engines, and by extension Toyota engines, are fairly loud. With a CVT, it will hold a very high RPM over a prolonged period of time when you go on full throttle. So as you press on the throttle on the Alza, you get that drone, which is very loud, quite annoying as well. But having said that, this doesn't really feel like a traditional CVT, because as you have heard, on full throttle it does give a bit of breathing room for the engine. It goes up and down and up and down again. It somewhat mimics the movement of a normal automatic transmission, and in that sense it gives it a far more natural feel to the driver. It doesn't have much of that rubber banding effect that you do in earlier CVTs. Like I said, one of the best CVTs in the industry for small vehicles, right here on a Perodua. Now, as for performance, now obviously this is not the kind of car that you want to go, corner carving, going up gunting or whatnot, but acceleration is still crucial. Now, 0 to 100, there is no official claim for this car from Perodua, but I have timed it between 12 to 12.5 seconds from 0 to 100. That is about a second slower compared to a Myvi 1.5, and it's not too bad, I guess, for a much bigger MPV like this. That is, of course, with just me driving alone. With a lot of people on board, like I have tried with 6 adults on board, this car will feel a lot weaker, a lot more lethargic. You will feel that mostly when you're going uphill, where you can sort of feel like this car is going out of puff. But that is extreme usage, I think. How often are you going to go up gunting with full 6 or 7 adults on board? For most people, that's only going to be like maybe once a month. So for that, I think it's more than powerful enough. I mean, don't get me wrong, this car will get you up and down gunting, no problems at all. It just feels a tiny bit underpowered if you're doing it with full adults on board. With just 1 or 2 passengers on board, you will hardly ever feel the difference between this and a regular Myvi, I think. So in terms of the mechanicals, the engine is fairly powerful. It's very loud, obviously, but it pulls quite strongly together with the CVT. We've mentioned this before in our Myvi facelift review. Changing from a 480 to a CVT has given the Myvi a far better road manners in terms of driving compared to the pre-facelift version. With the Alza, because you're also changing to a new engine together with a new transmission, the change is transformational. It is a huge generational leap for the Alza, in a positive way, obviously. If you were to compare this back to back, I think you would be very happy with the improvements that Perodua has made with this car. I don't think it's necessarily any quicker than the old Alza. I think it may even feel slightly slower because the old Alza was even louder still, and the change of the gears of the 480 may make it feel like you are going slightly faster. But in terms of overall daily drive, this is clearly more than enough. I don't think this is underpowered at all. Now onto fuel efficiency. Perodua claims that this new Alza is no less than 40% more efficient than the old Alza. It even says that this is capable of doing 22 kilometers per litre. Now, of course, those are merely claims, because out on the road in the real world is nowhere near as impressive as that. Now, having driven this car for around 300 kilometers through my regular daily drive and routes, highways, jams, with 6 people up, 4 people up, a combination of everything, I've managed to average between 14 to 15 kilometers per litre. That's a fair bit lower than the claimed 22, of course, but for all intents and purposes, I think 15 for a car like this is respectable enough. Whether that's 40% better than the old car, I doubt it, but 15% is not bad either, is it? Helping that, of course, is the CVT. When you're out on the highway cruising 110, 120, maybe 130, the CVT allows the engine to rest at a very, very low revs. At 110, it's barely touching 2000 RPMs. Now, with a conventional 480, you'll be doing 3000. If you go higher, it'll be like 4000, and that is going to be very loud. With a drone in the car, it's not going to be comfortable, and of course, it's going to be consuming a lot more fuel in the long run. With this CVT, it will allow the engine to just rest at 1500, 2000, maybe just a bit more than that. Over longer journeys, it's far more relaxing. Daihatsu, the maker of this transmission, claims that with the latest D-CVT, it now has the ratio spread that is comparable to an 8-speed automatic. And having seen the cruising RPM of this car, I completely believe that claim. So compared to the old car, the more highway runs you use, the more efficient, the bigger the difference this will have compared to the old car. I think in the city, you probably won't get as big as a 40% upgrade in terms of efficiency, but in highways, yeah, you can probably get about that much better. Now, let's talk about the thing that has surprised me the most about this car, the driving dynamics. As with most Peroduas, they are usually much more impressive on paper than they are on the road. As soon as you take them out, the ride starts feeling a little bit, you know how they are, a bit cheap, a bit floaty and whatnot. This one, however, feels just nice. It's so planted, it's so well sorted. I couldn't believe that I'm driving a Perodua. It is that good. The thing that is outstanding to me is the ride comfort, the way it rides bumps, both small and large, and especially on the highways. This is just so composed, so relaxing, so comfortable. Yeah, it is a massive, massive improvement over the old Alza and even the later Perodua models like the Ativa and the Myvi as well. The longer wheelbase this car has over the two smaller models helps, obviously, but in terms of wheelbase, this is no longer compared to the old Alza. The dimensions are exactly the same, in fact. But if you were to drive the cars back to back, the difference in ride comfort is astronomical. You'd think you've gone forward 20 years. Well, almost there at least. So, for once, I'm now driving a brand new Perodua, and I've got no complaints when it comes to the driving dynamics of it. Usually with most Peroduas, you go like, it's fantastic on paper, but to drive, you need to get used to it. It's not the best, but yeah, it's good enough. With the new Alza, it's just good, period. Really is that impressive. Now, handling wise, it's not all that important for an MPV like this. Clearly, this is not the kind of car that you want to go up gunting, take corners and whatnot. But actually you can, because this car's dynamics is at the very least very, very competent. The steering wheel at low speeds is very light, very easy to use, easy to park, maneuvering around town and whatnot. But if you do take this car through fast corners, the wheel actually loads up quite well. It's one of the most surprising aspects about this car, I think. It loads up well. You can actually feel what the front of the car is doing, and you would be willing to push the car through bends. So the fact that Perodua, its ride and handling package, is more than decent, is actually very, very good, is just amazing for me. I'm so impressed. Perodua R&D has come so far from where they were before. I know they got a lot of flack for, just rebadging cars here and there, but you know what? The R&D for this car is properly done by the local boys and girls, and having driven it, I'm more than impressed. Another big improvement that you can clearly feel in the Alza is the way the brakes feel. This is a massive improvement over the old car. The old brakes felt very wooden, kind of dead. There's pretty much zero feel through the first 2-3 inches of the brake pedal, and only after that do you feel that the brakes are actually grabbing. With this car, it's far more gradual, it's far more natural. Massive improvement in terms of brakes. Now let's talk about refinement. I've already mentioned the engine is very, very loud, like so, but as you go on full throttle, you also feel a little bit of vibration coming through the pedal, a bit through the seat as well. So yeah, I think they could have done slightly better in terms of NVH. But having said that, this car's cruising refinement is excellent, at least up to 120 kilometers per hour. Driving around town, driving through open roads like this, you hardly ever feel as much of an annoyance coming from wind noise or any form of tire noise. It's all very, very muted. That is not something you would expect from a budget MPV. The wind noise does start to creep in above 120. At 130, it is properly loud. I don't think I can go at 130 for a long period of time in this car. But like I said, you stick to the speed limit, 110, it is perfectly quiet, far quieter than you would think it would be. Another thing to note is that if you have driven the latest 3rd generation Myvi, in the rain you would have surely heard the water splashing around the rear wheel wells. With this Alza, they've completely mitigated that issue, so it sounds completely fine even in the rain. But like I said, above say 110, 120, if you sit in the last row, there's a bit of a wind buffeting, a bit of a wind noise coming in. Now this is something that you can't really hear when you're driving the car, but sitting in the back, yeah, you do get a bit more wind noise coming in. I'm not quite sure if it's all from the optional window visors over here, but I do have a suspicion that it is mostly from this. Most cars that I've driven with the sun visors have a bit of extra wind noise. This one, yeah, I would guess is because of that as well. Now lastly, let's talk about the advanced safety features on this car. Ever since Perodua launched the 3rd generation Myvi back in 2017, it has led the pack in terms of active safety systems. Now suddenly AEB, or autonomous emergency braking, is available to the masses, and in the short time between 2017 and 2022, it feels like pretty much all new car buyers are aware of active safety systems. They are even asking whether the car has this or not. That's not something you would ever hear of back in 2015, 2016. So Perodua has single-handedly increased the awareness of active safety systems in Malaysia. That is absolutely fantastic. That we have to applaud them. So clearly Perodua has taken the safety crown from Proton, and the fact that they fitted the ASA system across the entire range of the Alza is brilliant as well. Safety, as they say, is a right. It should never be an option. So even if you're buying the cheapest version, you should get at least the basic safety systems. Yes, to me, AEB, or autonomous emergency braking, is now a basic safety system that all cars should have. But beyond that, this car also adds on quite a few active safety systems. The top-end AV has adaptive cruise control, or ACC. It also has active lane keep assist for a level 2 semi-autonomous driving. Now, Perodua uses a much simpler, much cheaper version of this system. It just uses a pair of cameras up top, and it's not the best implementation of this so-called level 2 semi-autonomous driving. Now, having tested this car over the weekend on highways and whatnot, I find myself not trusting the system at all, really. Now, I'm not talking about the ACC. This car does detect the car in front. It can follow the speed of the car in front fairly well. But in terms of detecting the road lines and following the trajectory of the road, this is one of the poorer systems I've tested over the past 10 years. So, those of you looking to buy the new Alza, I don't think you should be all caught up with the level 2 semi-autonomous driving feature that is exclusive to the AV. I think you should still buy the AV for all the extra bits like Apple CarPlay, all the nicer visual bits interior as well, but I don't think you should buy it solely for the additional so-called advanced driving assist systems. I don't think it's worth that extra price. The one thing that actually works well is the low speed follow function on this car, or as Perodua calls it, the stop and go function or something. I forgot, it's probably in the brochure somewhere. What it does is an extension to the adaptive cruise control function. It basically works at low speeds as well, and all the way down to a stop, even a traffic jam situation. Now, it actually can bring the car down all the way from cruising speeds all the way down to a complete stop if the car in front stops slowly enough, of course. And once the car in front of you moves off, you can trigger the car to follow suit as well. This is something that's usually called a traffic jam assist with most other car brands, and it works fairly well in the Alza. The only issue is with this car system, you have to trigger the system to move again after it's come to a stop. For instance, once the car in front has stopped, and so have you from the system, to go again, you have to press either the resume button on the steering wheel or tap the throttle pedal down there. Most other systems out there will automatically move as the car in front moves as well. Here, it's not quite as seamless. It's a bit more mafan, as most people would say it. So yeah, it's not quite as good as the best, but it works. It's just that, yeah, there's a bit of an extra step that you have to do. So to wrap up, in terms of the active safety systems, it's all very, very good, at least in terms of the basic systems like AEB, pedestrian detection, the lane departure warning, blind spot control. They all work as advertised. As you go up to the more advanced system like active lane keep assist, it doesn't really work all that well, but the few moments that it does will be enough to, you know, impress your friends at least. But I doubt most owners will be using that feature in the long run at all. But still, I would say don't let any of that detract from the fact that this is a fantastic car overall. Like I've said, it drives like no other Perodua I've tried before, at least not the recent ones. And for once, it is properly calibrated for Malaysian roads. Yeah, color me surprised. So that's our full review of the 2022 Perodua Alza. This new car over here is every bit as good as you would expect. It is a massive leap forward compared to the original in every single aspect. However, that is only to be expected for a car that is 13 years newer. One thing that genuinely surprised me, however, is just how well this car drives. Now, with pretty much all Perodua, you are practically guaranteed to get fantastic value for money, a lot of advanced technologies, practical interior, and lately class-leading safety as well. But for the most part, its appeal is mostly on paper. As soon as you drive it, you can sort of feel that the ride is a bit floaty, is a bit cheap, sometimes under-engineered as well. This is the very first Perodua that I've driven that doesn't feel anything like that. The way this car rides, especially on highways and through small roads, through small potholes, it is fantastic. Perodua's ride and handling R&D has gone a long way from 2009. Pair all that together with the car's sharp looks and practical interior, and the new Alza is an absolute winner in my books. I still think this works better as a spacious 5-seater as an upgrade for current Myvi owners, but even to be used as a proper 7-seater, this is still the best in the class. It has impressed me in pretty much every single aspect. So if you're in the market for a compact MPV or just a spacious 5-seater, this is the one that you should at least consider first over anything else in the market today. So what do you think of this review? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching and stay safe, everyone.